Hello, I'm Adam,
And I'm Adrian.
and welcome to Cast from the Crypt. Right now, it's December. It's about to freeze, about to get very cold for the next few days. And what better time to talk about John Carpenter's 1982 classic, The Thing? One of my favorite movies, and I think one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah, I tend to agree. There was a period of time in which I thought this movie was overrated. Can you believe that?
Maybe it was at one point, but I'm finding not many people in my generation have seen this movie, or at least not as many as I thought. Because I've been trying to, I've been seeing people, you know, over the holidays, and everyone I talked to about this movie, no one's seen it. So many people haven't
Yeah,
seen this movie. I showed it to a bunch of people.
no, I found the same thing. I am the one that shows people this movie now. I think I watched it for the first time on like sci-fi seventh or eighth grade, and I thought it was so dumb.
Oh, that's a great
It was.
way to watch it, though.
It wasn't until high school or college when I was like, okay, yeah, this is a really, really groundbreaking and phenomenal movie. And I know hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people agree, right? People love this movie. But you're right. Not enough people are watching it anymore.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I could not tell you when the first time I saw this movie was. It could have been at any random point in my life.
I'm sure
I've
your
seen.
grandpa was a fan.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Namely because of the just lengths this movie went to bring the monster to life. Of course, it's
Yeah.
known for its impressive practical effects. It was absolutely revolutionary at the time. It's charming today. I think it looks great today. It's so impressive because it looks like it's there. It looks like it's a real practical monster when you're watching the movie. And to even begin to think like, how did they make this? How did they create this? How did they puppet this? It I I can't even fathom how you'd get something like this to work, but this movie does it, and it's kind of eye candy for that. At least the monster itself is eye candy.
Yeah, I agree. So, for those that are not, at all familiar with this movie, The Thing is a 1982 sci-fi horror film created by the legend, prolific director John Carpenter, director of Halloween, The Fog, this movie, Escape from New York, right? I mean, very prolific director, still doing stuff to this day. I've got to say, right, out of all the things that I've seen from John Carpenter, I do think this is my favorite movie of his. And of course, I really, really enjoy the first Halloween. I like Escape from New York. But this movie I own on Blu ray. And like you said, watching it on Blu ray, watching it on my big TV, I was blown away with how good this movie looks, even though it was made in 1982. Something that I love looking at is that E.T. came out the same year. Very, very different takes on extraterrestrials and aliens coming to Earth. This one, of course, very nihilistic, very dark, whereas E.T. is very hopeful and presents a coming of age story. But I also think that this movie really shines when compared to E.T. because though Steven Spielberg is, a genius and that movie is a classic, it's ugly. I think it's really, really ugly. And the creature design is ugly. And this movie, I was watching it and I was just blown away with how visceral the carnage is, with how amazing the creature design really, really is. And I just, every time I watch a John Carpenter movie, even if I've seen it 10 times, I'm really impressed with his work and the people that he surrounds himself with.
Yeah, Robin Button was the head of the practical effects team, and wow.
Yeah.
Hats off to him. I mean,
Yeah.
this movie is unlike a lot of horror movies. even the classic horror movies, this movie is highly regarded in cinema at large. You can find lots of scholarly articles about this. I was able to find the film on the Internet Archive because it's one of these movies that people put on a pedestal. It's to be displayed. It's truly, this is like a work of art. It's so influential and was so important. It really did show what a movie could be, show what practical effects could do. So for the effects alone, this movie is amazing, is worth the watch, is praiseworthy. But on top of that, the direction, the story, and the horror element is also so well done. Is so well done. I'm so engrossed in this story, in the mystery of who is the monster. And I've seen the movie. I know who the monster is. I've seen this movie a million times. I know what happens, yet I'm still holding my breath and on the edge of my seat every time I watch it.
And I think it's important to note, this movie, when it came out, was a visual effects marvel. It was. The special effects were highly regarded. What I also think it's important to note, though, is that the following of the actual film began semi-recently. This movie, I mean, as far as critics go, this movie was panned. The actual script, right, and the character work was panned. And a lot of people did think it was excessive in its violence and gore, though you cannot deny the quality of the violence and gore therein. I find it shocking that people, critics particularly, did not see what this movie was at first. I know that we've gotten there now, and every horror fan that has seen this movie can understand how monumentally important it was and continues to be. But the stick up people's butts back then to not see the piece they had in front of them is just, it blows me away.
I can't help but feel like if anyone disliked this movie, they were heavily prejudiced against it off the bat. Because going into this movie, if you knew nothing and just surface level watch the movie, I think it's very hard to not enjoy it. It's paced so well. And in a mystery like this, who is the monster? Sort of a whodunit, I guess. That's a movie that could easily be boring. That's a movie that could have the pacing wrong very easily. But this movie walks that tightrope flawlessly. Like, it really does. The tension builds as the movie goes on. And I was completely engaged the entire time I watched this movie. And every single time I watch this movie. I never get bored of it. I think it's an appropriate length. Yeah, it's an hour and 49 minutes. So it's longer than just like kind of a lighthearted, cheap throwaway horror movie, but it's also not like crazy long. And just the story is engaging. I don't know. I can't see how anyone could dislike this movie.
I'm gonna throw this out there.
Yeah.
As far as pacing goes, and as far as, constructing the movie in such a way that there's suspense, big reveal, suspense, big reveal. I think this movie is like perfect. I think it's really, really expertly paced. And the violence, though, again, some might find it excessive. I think it comes at times when you least expect it. I think it comes at times when the audience is, asking big questions, and boom, character turns a corner. We see just ungodly horrors. I really, really think this movie's structured so well. And I can't name a movie. Really, really, I cannot name a movie that is put together better than this one. I think it's perfectly paced.
Maybe due to the violence, gore, and just disturbing look of the thing itself. For a 1982 audience, maybe that's what turned people off. And I think that's the only explanation. But in 2022, we're a lot more desensitized to that sort of thing. We've seen crazy stuff in a lot of movies. And I don't think this is as unpalatable to a general audience. And so maybe that has affected its reception.
One of the things that, if you look up this movie and you read, there's a theory that this movie maybe didn't do well in the box office because, folks, in 1982, there was a recession going on. Stuff was not going well in the country. This movie, of course, very, very bleak. And then you had family-friendly features like E.T. come out. This movie was almost doomed, right? And I do think that is probably part of it. E.T. is certainly more palatable, but I don't think it's better. And it's not like John Carpenter wasn't already renowned and well-known in 1982. He was. So, I think that this movie just, the cards were kind of stacked against it when it came out.
Another thing this movie does well, impressively, I think, is there's a cosmic element to the horror, and cosmic horror is almost impossible to get right in a movie. The idea that out there in the stars there's incomprehensible forces of destruction that could wipe out humanity in the blink of an eye is one that most people try not to think about, but I guess it's a legitimate concern. What if an asteroid just comes and destroys the Earth? We are all powerless to stop it. And this thing, even the way it looks, this sort of writhing mass of like horrors that you can't even grasp what it looks like, Like, it's the ultimate alien. It's so alien, it doesn't even have a true form.
I just love the fact that you start the movie and you're introduced to this pretty tight-knit group, right, on this really isolated research station in the middle of nowhere. They are in Antarctica, and you are rooting for these guys because they're all alone and they're already so isolated in such a bleak environment that you want them to be able to beat this thing. And yet that cosmic element, there's no way. I mean, the minute it landed, it won. And, it's gut-wrenching, but it's what makes this so appealing, because it's that pain that comes with watching these characters working against an unthinkable force. It's true terror, true horror in that sense. Not many movies do this anymore. Yes, we get a lot of slashers, right? We get a lot of fun ones too, like X this year. But we get modern creature features like Troll that we just covered. We get everything still, and there's still good horror movies being made, but there isn't quite a lot of movies that are made that give you this same sense of helplessness that movies like The Thing and other cosmic horror classics, which I can only name a few of, right, really do well. That's why I think I found Nope so refreshing and exciting as a horror fan, because it was one of the few things that kind of gave me that same true feeling of terror, of just not being able to overcome this great power. And of course, they do at the end of that movie, because I think nowadays you have to make those compromises in theaters. I don't know if this movie would be successful coming out today, to be honest, for similar reasons. We've just been through, a very difficult couple of years, still kind of going through it. I don't know if audiences have the stomach for this kind of thing anymore. Maybe that's why people aren't watching it. I don't know. But we now live in a world of Stranger Things where the kids win every season and then it's a repeat. And I just don't know if this would do well anymore, which is a shame, because it's really phenomenal.
Yeah, and we can talk about the ending more in a bit, but how bleak is the ending? I mean, from beginning to end, it's pretty bleak, but you still just, by nature of it being a movie, being a horror movie, and you kind of expecting the typical tropes and like structure of a normal horror movie, even though it's kind of hopeless at the beginning, you expect it to, okay, well, it'll work out in the end. the protagonists will win because it's a movie, you know? But watching it, like, no, it doesn't follow what you'd expect. It is subversive. And I really appreciate that as well. Like, maybe it is bleak, but I don't know. Every time I finish this movie, I, like, am left with goosebumps. I think it's such a perfect ending. But yeah, to speak to your point about the isolation, they're in Antarctica on a base. And so right off the bat, they're kind of like, well, it's these researchers holding it together. They're sort of living together and they're working as a team is kind of what's keeping them sane and going. Like, we really get a good sense of, like, the whole organization is one moving body. Everybody has this rapport. We get introduced to this whole base, this huge ensemble cast, and they're all interacting with each other pretty organically, and we're getting little insights into all of their characters. We get a little more focus on Kurt Russell's character, R.J. McCready, because he is, of course, the main character, but we still get good amount of focus on every other character. You know, we get a scene of Knowles skateboarding and listening to music. We get a scene of Windows sleeping on the job. We get to see Childs being a hothead. Like, all this happens before anything happens. You know, we learn about the characters, and so whenever they start getting picked off one by one, it does feel more like we know these people, or at least the other characters know these people. You know, there's a scene where Bennings, yes, there's a character named Bennings. There's a scene where Bennings is killed and turned into the Thing, and they know he's the Thing, and they're gonna have to kill him, or at least kill it. And this character, Gary, who's supposed to be like the captain of this organization, he stops McCready and he says, "But McCready, I know Bennings. I've known him for 10 years. He's my friend." Even though they know that this isn't Bennings, it just looks like Bennings. You know, it adds to this sense of, like, camaraderie that they have, and it feels so heart-wrenching that this rapport they all have, this companionship, is shattered. No one can trust anyone. Anyone could be the monster. The only one you know is real is yourself. Like, it's so bleak, but it's so scary also. It works so well. I love that about this movie.
Does. It does. As far as the establishing the characters and kind of giving you a sense of the environment that these folks work in, it reminds me very much of Alien, and I love it for the same reasons that I love Alien so much, especially the first, 40 minutes of the movie where you get to see the crew working together. A lot of movies jump the gun, I should say. They give you expositional dialogue, they give you everything under the sun other than just meaningful interaction between people, right? Real interactions in this environment that they live in, day out. And this movie does it so well. And I actually think it does it better than Alien because, like you said, it gives you those little snippets, a look into each of their lives, their hobbies, which I just adore. And you're exactly right. It makes the ensuing violence and bloodshed all the more horrific.
Yeah. Because nobody can trust each other, it feels like the isolation is that much more real. It feels like the environment is once again hostile. There's a character named Dr. Blair. He's one of the two, doctors they have on base, and he's the first one to discover how the Thing works. He does research on the individual cells of the things, and he finds out that each cell can replicate perfectly the cells of any other organic life. So this thing can completely and perfectly imitate any other living thing. So no one knows which thing is the Thing and who's real. Blair doesn't tell anyone this, because who could he tell? They might be the Thing. So what does he do? He goes on a rampage. He starts destroying all the ways anyone can escape. So now they really are isolated. They're trapped on this base. And then he's threatening to kill people. He's destroying all forms of communication. And eventually, the other characters have to subdue him, and they lock him in this shed outside in the cold. In one of the first things he does, like later on, we see he's built a noose. Because being alone, stuck out there away from everybody else, is just that depressing, I guess. And each character, they're so friendly with each other at the beginning of the movie, and so quickly they all get so nasty and so hateful towards each other. They're literally accusing each other of being an inhuman murderer. Like, there's no worse insult, but it's also the reality of the situation.
In that situation, oh no, man, I wouldn't be that quick to hug you either.
Yeah.
You know, and it is, again, you cannot fathom being in that situation. The movie presents this just unthinkable horror with these characters that feel so human, this world, this base that feels so lived in, and you just have to watch everything unfold. It's a wonderful setup for a very good movie.
I don't know, a bunch of, like you said, these good reveals, these moments where it feels like they're getting a one-up on the thing and they're getting closer to solving this crisis, but then the thing kills someone or escapes and turns into someone else, and they're back to square one, and they slowly keep finding out who the thing is, only for it to go wrong. Someone else is the thing now, and this keeps happening until there's only just a handful of these people left. By the end of the movie, the remaining survivors are, which I believe are Gary, Knowles, Childs, and McCready. They decide that they're going to destroy the base, burn it all down, and kill themselves along with the thing. It's the only thing they can do. Because if this creature, if this monster gets out into the general populace, it will be the literal end of the world. and nothing could be more bleak. Nothing could be more frightening.
It's funny you bring that up. Blair is, doing his maths and inputting, I guess, information into a simulation on a computer, and he's seeing how long it would take for this thing to take over the world. I love this scene. It gives him some number of days, and I did the math in that moment because I was curious. I had never actually gotten my calculator out and seen how many years it would be. It says 3 years. This is so minute. I know this. But what I really enjoy about that scene in particular is it doesn't say, T-minus 4 days until the destruction of Earth. It doesn't say 1 year. It gives him 3 years. Because this thing, it's quick in that it can basically, it destroyed their lives within, how long do you think this movie,
like
how
a
many
day,
days do you think this movie takes place?
1 or 2 days.
Yeah, I feel like it's 2 days maybe. But you don't get the sense that this thing is making quick work of people. And yet, I just love that it doesn't give him this absolute doomsday scenario. It tells him there's 3 years. But could you imagine those 3 years that this thing would be out in communities? 3 years of people finding themselves and
their society in total collapse. I love that moment. I don't know why it sticks out to me and why I decided to actually get out a calculator that day and see how long it would take. But the fact that it was 3 years and not a week made it even more terrifying to me.
Yeah, well, it reinforces that cosmic element once again. This thing from space can literally end humanity and all life on Earth in 3 years, in an agonizing process where it devours the populace.
Yeah,
it's so freaky.
It got me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Scarier to me that it takes long. If it was 3 weeks, I'd be like, all right, well, make quick work of me.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about the plot. It's a very nice plot. Nice mystery, but it speaks for itself, I think, this movie. It's interesting. I would hope everyone in the world has seen this movie, but I know they haven't. So instead of talking about the plot, I want to talk about, if you're okay with this, individual moments in the story that are left ambiguous and mysterious as to what happens. It's just stuff that we can speculate on, but I love speculating about this movie. One of the funnest things about this movie is talking with someone about it afterwards and thinking, saying, who do you think was the thing in this scene? Or what do you think this character was doing in this scene? Because we don't get the answer to a lot of these questions.
No, yeah, we don't. And yes, I think that's
okay.
A better use of time. I feel like people should just go see this movie for themselves if they haven't already.
Absolutely. Okay, so like I said, Blair gets put out in the shed for being crazy, but towards the end of the movie, when it's just Gary, Knowles, Childs, and McCready left alive, they discover actually there is one thing left. It was Blair. They go to give Blair the test that they've been doing to test his blood to see if he's one of the things or not. And they find he's not in the shed, and he's dug a whole tunnel underneath the shed and is building a spaceship. Okay, he must be the thing. So if Blair's the thing, when did he become the thing? Because he couldn't have done it when they put him in the shed. They stopped him from destroying all communication to the outside world and all modes of escape. So that way, the thing, along with everybody else, could not leave the Antarctic. So surely he was not the thing then, if he was actively stopping the thing from spreading to the rest of the world. Then he's in the shed for the rest of the movie, and they periodically go and check on him. At some point, he was infected and replaced with the thing. But when do you think that was? Because when they first put him in the shed, he says, McCready, keep an eye on Clark. Clark was the man responsible for taking care of all these sled dogs. When the thing first appeared to the group, he appeared as a husky. And so Clark was in charge of looking after the thing for a long time, probably spent the most time with the thing. So that's a legitimate reason to be concerned. Before Blair goes on his rampage, he asks Clark, like, oh, you've been with the thing the entire time? And he's clearly concerned about it. He's clearly thinking about it. On one hand, it makes sense that he'd be worried about Clark, but on the other hand, we find out later Clark is not the thing. He was a human the entire time. So was Blair the thing trying to cast blame on someone else, or was he, Blair, legitimately concerned? And if so, at what point did he become the thing?
Damn.
This is something I think about.
I don't know, because, he, in his rampage, one of the things he does is he kills the rest of the dogs. I think after he does that computer simulation, right, in his fit of paranoia, and before he starts to destroy all of the equipment so that they can't communicate with folks, I think somewhere in that rampage he was infected.
You think before the rampage?
No, I think somewhere in the rampage.
Oh, you think while he was rampaging, someone infected him?
I do. Because, I don't know, how do we know that those dogs that were in the kennel with the thing, when the thing sprayed them with its, juice, how do we know that one of them wasn't carrying something? And when he killed it and got blood on him or something, he was infected?
That is a very good point. In the movie, we pretty much see the thing only replace people by completely attacking them and absorbing them into itself.
Right.
Or in the case of Windows, it kills him, it bites him, and then his body kind of starts to mutate. But they do say that it's possible the thing could poison your food, just put a few drops of its blood in your food and poison you that way. It is also noteworthy that once Blair is trapped in that shed, I think he starts drinking a lot. It's quite possible the drink was poisoned, or you're very right about that. I never thought about that, but I like that. Yeah.
That is my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
Because you're right. It's like, when else?
Well,
would it have happened?
I don't know when else, but something I noticed. When the characters go to the Norwegian base that the thing previously escaped from and destroyed, they find the body of one of the Norwegians with his, and it's a really visually cool effect, but we find a frozen corpse laying in a chair with its wrists slit, and the blood is frozen, literally frozen in his veins, dripping onto the floor, and it looks really cool. But this tells me that this guy killed himself because he'd rather be dead than be infected or absorbed or replaced by one of these things. Then later on, when they return to Blair, kind of like past the halfway mark through the movie, they're checking on him. They go see Blair, and Blair has made this noose in his shed, kind of paralleling what this Norwegian was doing. I guess he thought he'd rather die than become the thing. But notably, Blair isn't dead. He isn't hanging from the noose. He's just sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. And he says, "Guys, can I come out now? I was having an episode. I was in this fit of rage, and I'm sorry. But whatever was wrong with me is over. I'm okay now. I've calmed down. Can you let me out?" I think at that point in the movie, he is absolutely the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's why I think he's infected, well before they trap him, and I also think he is not. I think it would be too convenient for him to have been infected the entire time he's rampaging and destroying things.
Yeah, I think this makes sense. When exactly he gets infected, I guess it is a little more up in the air, but I definitely think he was at that point. And then we have a lot of the movie happens between then and the end of the movie. And we know he manages to build most of a spaceship in that time. So he must have been infected for a pretty long time. And he is a perfect imitation of Blair too, meaning the thing was able to completely and perfectly absorb him. But yeah, that's a fun thing I think about. Well, another question is, of course, who contaminated the blood samples? One of the first things they think of is we can test each other's blood and see who's the thing based on this. So they go to a closet they have in the medical room where everybody has stored samples of their blood, I guess in case they need a blood transfusion or something while they're trapped in this isolated place. And they find the blood has all been destroyed. Somebody's opened the cabinet, cut all the blood bags and infected everything, and everything's tainted and they can't use the blood. So then they have this huge argument of who could it be that got into the closet? Because the lock is secure. It's no signs of being broken. So someone must have unlocked it, destroyed all the blood, closed the door, and locked it again. The only people with access to this closet was Gary, who was kind of like the team leader, and Dr. Blair. As we've previously discussed, we don't think Blair was infected this time. He said he only gets the key from Gary to get to the blood, and then he gives the key back to him. So Gary is really the only one who has the key on him 24/7. But later on in the movie, we find out Gary was not the thing. He was never infected. He was never the thing. So who could have gotten this key, and who could have gotten into the closet?
I think it was Palmer.
You think it was Palmer?
Yeah, because and I've actually read into this one before. Palmer is one of the only ones that doesn't say anything when they first stumble upon the blood, and he is noticeably absent from the scene just after they stumble upon it, or I guess I should say from the frame whenever Gary is told to step down, right? Or rather when he steps down as commander. And so I think it's them telling us that, Palmer's up to something, or okay. That's what I gather from the movie.
That does make sense. We learned that it is the thing, but there are multiple things. Multiple people do get infected throughout the course of the movie. And whenever they do actually do the blood test later on in the movie, when they find a way to continue to do it, the results of the test are Palmer is infected. So if maybe there are different things, the thing that took over Palmer is thinking about the blood test and is worried about that. So I guess that does make sense.
I think so. That's mine.
Okay.
And I've been on a horror Reddit. I think a lot of people agree.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Now I'm going to move on to the ultimate question, the big one.
Yes.
Of course,
Yes.
at the end of the movie, everyone is dead. The whole base is burning down. MacReady has survived an explosion and has a single bottle of liquor. And then from the rubble, who comes up to greet him but Childs, played by Keith David, one of my absolute favorite actors. I love that man. And he says he thought he saw Blair, so he ran off into the snow. He saw the explosion of the base, and he came back. The biggest question that this movie leaves us with is, was Childs a thing? Was he the thing? It's, of course, ambiguous. It's supposed to be ambiguous, but it's the one I've seen the most discourse about. There's so much debate. I tend to lean towards the idea that he is a thing. But how do we know he's the thing, and kind of what clues us in on this? That is what's ambiguous. That's what people debate about. How do you feel? Do you think he's the thing?
Okay, so there are many, many theories about this ending. The biggest one is the child's breath theory. You've heard that one, right?
Of course I have, yeah.
Because you can see Kurt Russell's breath at the end of the movie because it's so cold outside, but you can't see Child's breath. Here's the issue with that. The thing, it perfectly replicates its victims. And it would perfectly replicate its breathing. And thus, I don't actually think that theory holds any water. I also know that there's theories about like the whiskey, because MacReady passes his whiskey bottle and he had like filled it with gasoline, right?
Well, that's a theory I've said, but I don't think he explicitly does that.
Yeah, so I don't know about that one either. For me, I know it's kind of fun to think Childs is the thing, but I think the nihilism of this movie, it makes me wonder. It's, maybe Carpenter is trying to say it's so sad that the two real humans can't trust each other at the end of the movie. I don't know.
No, that makes sense too, though.
I mean, I probably think Childs is the thing at the end of the movie, but I love not knowing.
Yeah, me too. It end of the day, it's up to your interpretation, and it's up to kind of what you want to believe.
Yeah, and I love Keith David, and he's great in this movie, and it's just fun to see them at the end sitting across from each other and saying, well, I guess we'll just wait this out.
Yeah, and throughout the movie, Childs and MacReady are two of the most accusatory characters.
Yes.
Childs is accusing everybody of tampering with equipment, of being a killer. MacReady is at one point attacked by Clark, and he shoots Clark dead. And that's how we find out Clark's a human. And Childs is not sympathetic at all. He says, I guess that makes you a murderer. He's kind of a hothead. So it would feel like if any two characters wouldn't trust each other, it would be these two characters. They've been accusing each other the whole movie, even when they prove to be real. So I do like that interpretation. A problem I have with the breath theory is I was watching this final scene with that in mind, thinking, okay, now I'm really going to pay attention. Is he breathing? And he kind of is breathing. Like, it's nowhere near as noticeable as MacReady, but of course they did not get Keith David to hold his breath or something. He Keith David is a human and he has to breathe. You can kind of see a little bit of breath coming off of him. Now, it's not as much breath. Like, MacReady's blowing huge clouds because it's supposed to be negative, 20 degrees or whatever. And Childs is just giving off a little bit of breath. But maybe you can chalk that up to, like, Childs is kind of shrouded in different lighting, maybe, or whatever. You can write it off.
Yeah.
For me, the theory I'm going to propose that explains it for me is he is breathing. The thing would replicate a person perfectly. But also, we know the thing is kind of freeze resistant because they find it frozen in a block of ice and it's evidently been there for like thousands of years. So maybe as it gets colder, the thing does breathe to imitate the human, but he also doesn't need to feel the cold. He's not worried about the cold. The cold isn't affecting him like it's affecting MacReady, so maybe that is why his breath is a little I don't know, less dramatic. But I don't know. That's, once again, this is all speculation. This is whatever. The movie itself, the cues it gives us to maybe question if Childs is the thing or not, is MacReady and him kind of have some cheeky dialogue about like, well, let's just see what happens. I don't think either of us are going to get out of here alive anytime soon. And then MacReady passes Childs the whiskey, and Childs takes a big swig. As he takes the swig, MacReady smirks and the music plays, the theme music, which, another thing about this movie, fantastic score. But the theme plays as he takes this swig, so maybe that is suggesting that we should be suspicious of Child, but that's all it suggests. We should be suspicious, but that doesn't mean he's the thing. That doesn't definitively mean he's the thing. We never see MacReady drink out of the whiskey. And I think this is where the gasoline in the bottle theory comes from.
Right.
But I don't think that theory holds water, just like the he's not breathing theory holds water, because if he is a perfect replication, he would probably notice the taste of gasoline, or maybe that humans aren't supposed to drink gasoline. But I also saw earlier today that people have made the argument that it is whiskey, but when it is suggested earlier that everybody prepares their own meals and nobody shares meals or touches anyone else's food, this goes against that logic, that advice, and they've been following it pretty consistently throughout the movie. And then suddenly at the very end, they're sharing a drink. So either that shows MacReady implicitly trusts Childs, or it shows that Childs is the thing and he's not worried about being infected because he is the thing. So I don't know.
I think it would have to be the latter if that theory is true, because I don't think he trusts him.
No, I don't think he trusts him either, but that would explain maybe why Childs wouldn't care about that. And it kind of goes against Childs' character too. One of the most accusatory people in this group, the most paranoid, is suddenly not caring if they share each other's drink and potentially contaminate themselves. Like, would Childs do that? That's the question. I don't know. That's kind of fun, though. That's another maybe explanation for what happens.
Yeah. It really lends itself to speculation. And how many years has it been since the movie came out?
Oh, yeah. 40 years.
40 years old, and still the subject of many a Reddit debate.
Yeah.
If that's not proof that this is a classic, I don't know what is.
It's one of the most fun endings to theorize and debate about, too.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I like the idea that he's the thing.
No, I do too. There's a bunch of theories that we barely scratched the surface. There are many of them. Oh
yeah. The ending is the one that everybody talks about the most, but there's so much that happens in the movie that isn't implicitly explained, and a lot of stuff, it's like we don't know what happens. We just kind of got to figure out based on what we know, but they're all fun to speculate about. Another thing to know, okay, I haven't heard anybody talk about this. This is an Adam original, but maybe someone's talked about it before, I don't know. Okay. So here is something that might prove that Childs is real. So the thing can perfectly replicate any biological life, but it can't replicate inorganic material. That's why whenever you become the thing, it tears through your clothes, and presumably they have to get new clothes. And Childs, throughout the movie, you might notice, has earrings. He has pierced ears. So if the thing replicated him, it wouldn't have earrings. But in this final scene, I've just pulled it up and I'm looking at it, Childs does have the earrings. So maybe this is the real Childs.
You're right. It would only be able to replicate organic material. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it really could be him. Yeah, I think they want us to believe it's the thing. But by some, sick, twisted fate, the two most accusatory, loudest voices in the room are now left to wonder if the other is the thing. And if they're both human, when that camera shuts off, what happens, right? What's we're left to speculate all the things that could happen. They could kill each other out of, pure fear and anxiety moments after the credits roll. I also think that is impactful in its own right. And I never even considered the earrings, but I'm into that.
Yeah, this is something I considered. But yeah.
That's a great theory. Have you posted that anywhere?
No, I have not. I was thinking about it while we were watching the movie.
You really should coin it.
Okay. Going on Reddit.
The Adam earring theory.
And there's ways that, of course, you could explain that. The thing could have taken the earrings off of Childs or whatever. But you will always find a way to make your speculative theory work. So it really is ambiguous. It really is up for debate. But
yeah,
for me, that's pretty hard evidence in favor of Childs as human. So these are a sample of the myriad fun theories about this movie and its many mysteries. But yeah, I freaking love this movie. The fact that, like, so many people are so engrossed in dissecting each scene to find out maybe more of what's happening than what's shown. Like, the fact that we're talking about it this much after we've seen it is a testament to how great it is and how entertaining it is. And how much I think about it.
I completely agree. The critics, I don't care for him. Ebert didn't like this movie. He said it lacked characterization. He said that the characters existed just to be killed. I think that this is quite contrary to the truth in this movie. I think the characters are good. I think they work well together. I think that they feel like real people. And I think it makes this movie that much more of a gut punch. I just do not agree with a lot of the original criticisms that came with this movie. And I'm glad and just really, really happy with the horror community that this movie is now being considered a classic, because it's objectively just a great horror film, a great creature feature in every way. I mean, I probably shouldn't use the word objectively so loosely, but I'll be honest, I haven't met a person that I've showed this movie, or, a person that has seen this movie that doesn't see just how smart it is.
Yeah, and if I found someone like that, I would probably look at them sideways. They would have to be a thing. I refuse to believe a human being could hate this movie that much. They must be an alien imposter.
They really must be. You know that John Carpenter went on to talk about its initial reception and talked about how this was like probably his biggest failure. And I just find that shocking. And I hope he knows how important this movie is to people now.
Yeah.
And just how fantastic the majority of the horror community finds it.
Yeah, what defines success and failure? I mean, maybe when it first came out, it didn't do well, but today, I cannot see this movie as anything else but hugely successful.
Yeah, me neither. I can't believe there was a time before it was hugely successful. Like, that is shocking to me. Genuinely shocking when I watch this movie.
I feel like every great horror movie came out to receive underwhelming success in the box office and critical panning. The Shining did, Alien did, and these movies deserve the world. It really is. I think there's just a stigma against horror movies.
Yeah, and a stigma against science fiction as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But whatever.
Yeah.
Go kick rocks, kid. That's what I say to Ebert.
Yeah, I'm not
Rest
always.
Rest in peace, Ebert. Truly.
Yeah.
But also, you were wrong about this movie.
Oh yeah, there's been quite a few times I've been like, Ebert, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Okay, well, that I've said, I could say so much more about this movie, but I'll stop here. If you're.
I think. Yeah.
Okay. What a great movie! Thank you for suggesting we watch this old classic, old but gold.
It felt right?
It felt right. It did feel right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me and talking about it too, Adrian.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Goodbye.